Welcome to my very first podcast episode. This is especially cool for me because this is me overcoming my own imposter syndrome about making a podcast, thinking, oh, Jason Linett is already knocking this out of the park. What do I have to offer? And maybe the tech is going to be too hard. I just had so many reasons why I wasn't ready to start. And then I had a conversation with Stephen Blake in which I realized that he has so much value to offer to this discussion of imposter syndrome, which is the idea that you have to do one more training, you need one more certification. What if you mess up when you are trying to work with a client? What if, all these scary things that we tell ourselves. We need one more piece of perfect office furniture or recording equipment before we can actually get started. So I hope that this imperfect podcast episode inspires you to take action, even if you don't feel like you're quite ready. Are you ever really going to feel like you're completely ready? In this podcast, Stephen is going to share how he went from 0 to over 1,200 trained practitioners in just 3.5 years, teaching them his old pain to go process, which is an amazing protocol that he'll share more about on this episode. He has also developed old fat to go and old stuff to let go, and he'll talk about how that's something that's coming up shortly as well. If you enjoy this podcast, I would love for you to rate it wherever you're listening. And if you're watching as a video, comment below or send me a private message and let me know what you enjoyed and what I can do to improve. I'm so happy you're here, and I hope you enjoy this episode. I've been toying with the idea of doing a podcast, of course, for years. And I have had so many people coming to me talking about imposter syndrome. Almost every client that's booked a one-on-one session with me the past probably 6 to 8 weeks has been, I really want to move forward in my business. I see this as an opportunity, but I'm feeling stagnant. I feel like I don't know enough. I need to learn more. Just this deep, all the voices that have gone through my head in the past, so I recognize them as, it almost feels like, I call it the impostor monster. It comes and it whispers these things in your ear, and I think it's just really something that's keeping us in our comfort zone.
Is it mainly female?
You know, it's actually not. It's about 50-50. And I just put out a survey. I've received 66 back, and I would say at least 40% are male.
Wow.
Yeah.
You see, quite a few years back, I was doing training for self-employment for people. And I interviewed them to see if the course was right for them. Mm-hmm. But they came along thinking I was interviewing them to see if they were allowed on the course. So what I used to get is that women downplayed how good they were, mm-hmm. and guys bigged it up. And I noticed this so often that I sort of, because it didn't matter to me either way, as long as the course was right for them, they came on it. And then when I was an employer and I had to set people on, when I interviewed women, whatever they said, I added 20% to it, and whatever a guy told me, I knocked 20% off. Because of that, I employed some brilliant women who would have talked me out of employing them.
That is so interesting. When I think about it, I can see the same being true. And I almost wonder if when men are doing that, when they're kind of bumping up their skills, if that's also seated in a sort of a imposter syndrome, so they think they have to inflate to make themselves look better.
Quite likely, yeah.
Yeah.
And it's something that I suffer from. You see, I'm doing something that's so novel that when I was on the pain panel in Las Vegas, everybody was giving, there was people questioning us. Everybody was giving the same answer until it got to me. But I was sat with some people who've been doing it 30, 40 years. It made me a little bit paranoid. Because I didn't want to upset them by saying, well, that's the old way of doing it, and here's the new way. So I was very careful with my answers and everything, but all the time I was doubting myself that I was right. Because I wasn't the expert. I'm the new kid on the block. I've only been doing this 9 years. So I was like, have I got this wrong? I wasn't doing, I'm so brilliant. I was doing, have I got this wrong? Why is mine so different? And if it's that easy, why haven't somebody cleverer than me found it? So I go there, and if I have a couple of weeks where people people don't sort of get the results I think they should, or just two people running where I don't get the right results, I sort of take myself down. But it's not a nice feeling.
I think it's really helpful for people to hear you share that, because I think that's, I have, these people that are coming to me have the same self-doubt. So to know that Stephen Blake feels that way too, and he's still moving forward. I was at a training in Toronto early, so I've only been doing this for 3 years. So I deal with so many of the same things. It's like I'm standing on the shoulders of giants, and I'm just, whenever I'm acknowledged in the hypnosis arena, I'm like, really? I'm doing okay? So, but when I was in Toronto at a training 3 years ago, Mike and Chris were talking about you and how awesome your protocol was. And so to me, when I think of you, I think of you as one of those giants of hypnosis. And
Wow.
yeah, will you talk to me a little bit about what you do and how long you've been doing it for? Just share your journey with us. And I don't think that how long you've been practicing is extremely relevant in other conversations, but in the context of people who think they need years and years and years of experience before they step into their own, what would you say to that?
I'll answer that first rather than how I started, because from the very first client I ever had, and they didn't come for therapy, I used to sell diet products. So I had a lady turn up for diet products, and she told me she had ME, and because of that she could barely work or do anything, because I had to find out a person's activity levels to put them on the right diet. And she said I spend most of my time in bed. She said I get paid for 2 hours work a week, but it takes me 40 hours to do the 2 hours, because I make a start of it and then I have to stop and then I have to go back to it and restart it. And I just felt so terrible for her. And I was training in NLP and hypnosis. And I sat down with her and sort of talked her through this. And I said, well, look, I'm doing this other thing as well. Could I look into this and see if I can help you? And she said, well, what's it going to cost? I said, I don't even know if I can help you. I'm not going to charge you. But I'd like to look into this and see if I can help. So I did everything I could over 2 weeks to investigate ME, chronic fatigue syndrome, and fibromyalgia. And at first, I just thought I'd bitten off more than I could chew, because I'd only just completed my training. I wasn't actually working on people then. But then at the end of it, I found a video from 3 people who recovered from it, and all I did was model what they all said that was similar. And I realized that they were overdoing things all the time. Everybody was overdoing things. And I created, in that moment, or in those 2 weeks, the way to help people have fibromyalgia, ME, and chronic fatigue syndrome.
Wow.
So that was a brilliant start for somebody who goes, can I do this?
Yes.
But what I did is, from day one, when I was actually taking people on, she came back a fortnight later and she recovered straight away. So, but I mainly help people with anxiety. And I had 2 restrictions. One is I'm quite remote from everywhere else. And Lincolnshire is a rural area, so there's not many people around where I live. So I've got big towns in sort of 18 miles away in every direction. So I didn't want people coming for regular treatments. I wanted to help them in one session. So I advertised I would do a breakthrough session with people, and that they'd get a major recovery in that time together. So we're not talking an hour, we're talking like 10 o'clock in the morning and go home when you're sorted out.
Okay.
So I had to get good very quickly. And I made a promise to people that when they left, that feeling would stay. And if it came back, I would work on them for free. So I did put a lot of pressure on myself, but I think the only difference between that and having this sort of imposter syndrome is that I never think it's not going to work. Yeah, I don't know what I'm capable of doing, but I also don't put any restrictions on thinking that I'm not capable of doing something. So I just blunder forward and hope for the best. Yeah.
I just wanted to say really quickly, I love that mindset. And one thing that stuck out to me right at the beginning is you told this woman, can we just, I don't know if this is the right word to use this word try, but can we just try this out and see? I think I might be able to help. It wasn't this pressure that you were placing on yourself, but it was almost an openness and a curiosity in which you entered that time. Is that accurate?
Very accurate. Because my whole thing, even when I train people, is I say your attitude needs to be let's see.
Yes.
So even though I train people to work on physical pain, and quite soon I'm launching my old stuff to let go, which will be about emotional pain, it's always this sort of, when somebody says, can you work on this, or would it work on this? I always say, well, let's see. Put somebody in front of me who's got it and let's see. Because if I haven't worked on it before, I'm not going to say, well, I haven't worked on anybody before, so it's unlikely or whatever. I actually just go for it and do it. And if it works, I go, well, yeah, of course it works.
Now I can almost hear people who are listening saying, well, how can I charge for let's see? Will you speak to that?
Yeah. You see, I used to be a plumber and a builder. And you've got very fixed things then, because it's sort of, if somebody wants a bathroom in, you put a bathroom in and the bathroom's finished. But when we work with somebody, we're working with their problem, and in many respects, and this is what I teach, they have to fix themselves with our help. So I don't know if their body's capable of mending whatever it is I'm trying to help them with. But I do know that when I ask it, if it says yes, it does it. I've made something that's really complex into a simplicity of, they've got a problem, their unconscious understands what the problem is, but thinks it's protecting them. And I convince it it's not protecting them. And can it do that in a better way? And it just goes, yeah. And it does it. And I don't even have to tell it what to do. It's capable of being, if you say, this is what you're doing wrong, that they don't like it. However, I trust in you that you were doing it for good reasons when you first started doing it. However, now it's just really badly impacting on their life, and I'm sure you wouldn't want that for them. Could you do it a different way? Could you switch this whole program off and do something differently for them? And the answer is usually yes. And then it does it. And so this is everything. This is rashes. This is people with complex regional pain syndrome. This is, I've lost count of the amount of people that have left my studio and walked when they came in on crutches.
Wow.
And I have to chase them down the road saying, you've forgotten your crutches. And they go, I don't need them. I go, well, neither do I. I'm back. And so I'm quite used to seeing things now that at first I thought there were miracles. I thought I got to watch a lot of miracles. I knew I didn't perform them, but I got to see a lot of them. But when I analysed them so I can teach them to other people, it boils down to something that's really fundamental. So I talked to a woman I got her out of pain, and we wanted to get her straightened out because her body was twisted and had been, as far as I knew, either from childhood or birth, and she was about late 30s, early 40s, I think. So I got her out of pain, and her husband asked her if I could get her out of the posture she was in. And she couldn't move the top half of her body. And I literally asked her unconscious to bring her back into balance and alignment. And she changed in front of me. She went from screwed up like this to dropped her hands down and was watching both of us. And when we both me and her husband, her jaws dropped, and she went, what are you looking at? And she didn't even know anything had changed.
Wow.
And I had two days thinking, that can only be described as a miracle. I can't think of any other way. But then, after 2 days, I got the answer. If she'd been locked up all her life, she's actually developed muscles because she's in tension, isn't she?
Right.
Strong muscles, So the only thing I did is make her relax.
Wow.
That's all I did.
Wow.
So the thing I thought, oh God, what's going on here? And then 2 days later, I went, I just helped her relax, didn't I? So you see, this is where we get the imposter bit from, because we're not doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I've had lots of different jobs. I've been in teaching and building and training people and management. And you sort of see everybody around you and you think, how did I get here? But then when you've been in the job a few weeks, you realise that people above you aren't as clever as you are. Yeah, and they're issuing stupid orders for you to carry out. And you think, I'd never do that. So I think we zoom in and out of this imposter syndrome, sort of thinking, oh, I've got the job now, I'm brilliant. And then you get in the job and it's all new. So you think, oh, I don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
So I think we're just affected by whether we feel good about ourselves or not.
Yeah.
And when we're not, we destroy ourselves in some way.
I fully agree with you. And a moment ago you said we're not doing it. And I 100% agree with you. So when people come to me and talk about, thank you for doing this for me, I cannot take that compliment, because I know I simply guided them through a process of unlocking that within themselves. So with that in mind, if you were to talk to someone who has multiple certifications, or maybe one, I just had a woman who has a 14-month certification and she feels like she needs to know a little bit more before she starts. Is there some kind of a litmus test or some kind of a base understanding that one should have to know that it's time for them to move forward? That's a big question.
There's a 3-letter word, which is now.
Mm. I have goosebumps.
It can only be now. A very interesting thing that I went to once. I went to a thing for therapists and people in that line of work. And it was a marketing course for a 2-day weekend. And over the 2 days, probably about 500 people at this event, massive event. And I went around just chatting to people. I said, oh, what do you do? And people would say, oh, I do Reiki, I do this. There were 5 minutes telling me all the things they did. It was usually 7 to 15 things. I mean, just all these things they got. And then I said, oh, how's your business going? And I talked to a lot of people that weekend. Not one had started the business. One of them. And here they were on another course, learning how to market a business that contained 15 different things. This is crazy.
Yes.
So I said to all of them, because I like to play with people as well as, because I think sometimes when you spring it at them, it makes them learn. I said, so when will you launch your business? And they said, well, I'm just doing a training course next week. And when I've done that one, I'll probably start my business. And I said, I don't think you will. Why not? I said, well, you didn't start the last 19 times. So, and I have this. I train people up in something that's really simplistic. It only takes a day to train. And literally, where possible, we get people to work on somebody at the end of the day. And I still lose people who go away and think, well, I'll do this when I feel really confident about doing it. And I have to do a lot of follow-up work with people. I bring out new stuff. I tidy up the work and say, I've refreshed it now. And I do free training to keep everybody on board. But I spend a lot of my time doing that for people. And it's just about this imposter syndrome that they feel they've got to be really good when they do it. And you haven't noticed this so much, but I've noticed it mainly females. Guys just tend to bluff and bluster and just do it and hope they get it right. And women tend to want to know they're going to get it right before they start. There's that lack of confidence in themselves that it does happen to guys as well. I was in the group, Mike Mandel's group a few weeks ago, and there's a guy in there and he questions everything he's just learned and into real technical details. And I put things underneath like, why don't you just have a go at it? You know, or and I put some real soft stuff underneath to say, you know, just I don't, you know, I've been doing this 9 years. I don't use that. I did learn that, but I can't remember any of that because you don't need it. You don't need a lot of the things you learn because it's all steps and the science behind it and everything else. And all we need is an understanding enough to understand that person. And we think that the client's going to ask us something we don't know the answer to. Well, the answer to that is, I'm sorry, I don't know the answer to that. But there's nothing wrong with saying that. In fact,
Yes.
if we're congruent with that we're telling the truth and our body's showing that we're telling the truth and we're open with people, the rest of it doesn't matter. People don't want to know the technicalities and things. I never get asked them because I don't use them myself, which doesn't confuse people, which then they don't have to ask me what I meant. I was training one day and I mentioned something and someone in the audience said, what part of the brain is that, Stephen? Well, I never usually answer questions, but that day I thought, well, I'll just tell them because I know it. It's the amygdala. Well, this woman then started an argument for 5 minutes at the back of the room. The training stopped for 5 minutes while everybody turned around and said, no, Stephen's right, it is the amygdala. No, I think it's this. But this is the woman that asked the question. So if she asked the question and she knew the answer, why did she ask the question other than to, you know, look at me, I know the answer to this. It's really technical and Stephen's not giving you all the big words.
That's when I listen sometimes to presentations from HypnoThoughts or other trainings and someone does that, I think if I'm like standing in the room in my mind saying, this is the teacher, we're here to listen to this person.
Yeah, and that's what happens. It's almost like, you know, you think you're good, but I know even more than you do because I know all these big words. And I used to be paranoid about this when I first started. And I met this lovely woman who became a very close friend of mine, a lovely Asian woman, just a few years older than my daughter. And we became really good buddies. But when I first met her, she asked me what I did, and I started explaining it. And she started going like this because she's a doctor, you know. So she was doing like this with her eyes sort of like, oh. And then she said, well, tell me about this then. And I'd tell her, and she went. And then she went, that's brilliant, Stephen, because that's the I agree with you head shake.
Yeah, so for anyone listening to the audio, Stephen is shaking his head no as he's speaking.
Yeah, and this is side to side like you would expect for a no.
Yeah.
So, yeah. But for her culture, this is I agree with you.
Oh, okay.
So she said, you're brilliant, Stephen. She spent a weekend with me and she nearly filled up an A4 manual. And she had a black pen and a red pen. And she never allowed me to see all her notes because I said, I've told you so much good stuff. I'd like a copy of it. And she said, you're never going to get to see this, Stephen. I have no idea why not.
Wow.
But since that day, I've not feared anybody. Because literally if somebody said, in fact, yeah, let me bring you to a different story that proves the point. One of my students had somebody comment quite nastily on his Facebook page saying, how dare you say you can help people out of pain? I've trained for 6 years, I'm a fully fledged doctor and I can't get people out of pain. How dare you say this? And this guy wrote to me and said, what shall I put? And I said, well, why don't you put underneath something like this? Okay. It's always good to start off with admitting you're incompetent. So you've trained for 6 years and you can't do this. Now, if you wanted to be able to do this, why aren't you asking how you can do it instead of telling me that I can't do it? So if anybody says to me now, well, I know a doctor and he says that's impossible, I say, does he help people out of pain? Can you go to your doctors without tablets or anything and you leave his surgery and you're not in pain anymore? And they go, no. And I go, well, I do, so shut up. And that's all there is to it. But I'm confident in that now because I've helped thousands of people.
Yeah.
But I was like this from the start, you know. Because if you don't, you're just giving in to everybody's criticism, and a lot of the time it's not the people's criticism, it's our own internal criticism of us thinking we're not up to it. You see, when I talk to people about being bullied, I say, what the bully says to you, it has to have some meaning that you go inside and you look to see if you are like that for it to hurt you. Because if somebody said, you're 17 foot tall and I'm sick of looking up to you, and you lord over everybody because you're 17 foot tall, you just go, well, I'm not, am I? So for it to hurt, you have to go inside and go, am I like that? Is that me? Am I that bad? And a great thing everybody should learn is what other people think of you is none of your business.
I love that. So for a person who's maybe heard these things about themselves, perhaps even since childhood, and they've taken them on as their own identity, if they were to check in and say, is that true? How can they access that part of them that can really give them that authentic answer?
You see, you can't ask the question, is that true? I've had people like that in my consulting room, and one woman said, I'm fat, ugly and stupid. And I said, that's not true. It is. It is. There was nothing I could say or do that would convince her that she wasn't those three things. And I said, but who beat you up when you were younger? And she told me, and I said, so who's beating you up now? She said, they are. I said, oh, they come around your house, do they, and they beat you up? No, they're in my head. I said, well, it's your head. Why don't you throw them out? Are they paying rent? And I do bring it back to the making it absurd. Are they paying rent? Is like, no, of course they're not. Why aren't they paying rent? Well, they don't live there. Well, what are they doing in your head then? You take it from, you're telling me off because I'm not real, but you're thinking thoughts that aren't real anymore. They're history. It's
right.
over and done with. You're beating yourself up every day for something you were told, and there's a thing called cognitive bias. Most people are familiar with cognitive dissonance, of not listening to anything you don't want to hear. But cognitive bias is the way that we are programmed so that we're not absolutely logical. If we hear something and we go, oh, that's not true, if we hear it again and again and again and again and again, eventually we go, well, it must be. So it sinks in. But you see, these people are saying those terrible things to themselves every day, and they believe themselves. Because why wouldn't you? You wouldn't lie to yourself. So somebody else has said it, you've joined in with it, and now you're making it a program. Telling yourself to become fat, stupid, and ugly. Well, what's your body going to do? It's going to give you exactly what you asked for. I want to be fat, ugly, and stupid. You might as well say that every day. I want to be fat, ugly, and stupid. Let's get this over and done with. So we're instructing the unconscious, and we could just as easily put the good words in. We could say every day I get more and more handsome. Every day I feel really good about this. Every day I help more and more people. We can just say that. You see, to me, if I train somebody and they don't use this, it upsets me from the point of view that I'm not in this to have money in my bank and a certificate on their wall. I'm in this to get other people out of pain. And if you're trained to help people out of pain and you don't use it, that's a crying shame for thousands of people, not just the person I've trained. They could have helped thousands of people out of pain, and they're not doing that. Why? Because they're not confident to have a go and probably feel a little bit foolish. In fact, I've got the proof of this. I've got this fabulous guy called Drew Coverdale. I trained him, and he's a physiotherapist. And during the training, I was watching him, and he looked like the person who was least enjoying my training. And I do try and make it fun, but he was very studious. And he got in touch with me a few months later and said, I haven't used this yet because I don't know how to introduce it to a business where people expect me to work on them hands-on. And if somebody turns up and I just do your method on them and they go away and it doesn't work, the assurance company's paid for it and they're going to say, well, did it make you better? And they're going to say, well, it didn't even touch me. And I'll stop getting paid. So how do I do this, Stephen? So we arranged to have a meeting, excuse me, a Zoom meeting a few weeks later, or a week and a half later. And he came on this Zoom meeting and he said, well, I think you're just going to tell me to do it while I work on them, aren't you? And I said, yes, that's all I thought of. And Drew said, this was the most fabulous thing. Drew said, well, I decided I would rehearse all the things in the script in my head. And I would just say them in my head so that when I actually do work on somebody, I can just come out with it. And I'm not going, oh, do I do this bit here? So he did a bit of an experiment. So he got a guy in front of him and he's working on him. He's worked on him for 3 months. The guy's been in a car crash and has got whiplash injuries. And it's one of these people where it's not doing any good. He sort of relieves the stress and the tension a bit. And for half a week, the guy feels a little bit better. And then he comes back next week, feels just the same. He hasn't changed since he first worked on it. And a physiotherapist is a very skilled thing. It's like 5 years training. And he trained with me for a day. So he starts work on this chap and he thinks, well, I'll practice in my head. So he goes through the script in his head and he gets to the bit where he goes, right, so are you willing to let me work on you with this new thing I've learned? Well, obviously he's given permission to be worked on, but he says, are you going to give me permission to work on you? Give me some sort of sign. None of this was said out loud. The guy goes, and he goes, I think that's just a coincidence. He carries working on him. And we do 3 yeses, and he got to the second yes of, will he turn the pain off? And the guy goes, So it spooked him a while. So he spent a few minutes just working naturally on the guy, and then he went, well, I might as well go for it. This guy doesn't know I'm working on him, so it doesn't matter. So he went through the whole process. He got the last yes. He got the draining of the pain, inflammation, and tension, and come back in the room when you're ready, and let me know when you've got back in the room. And the guy went, oh,
Wow.
And then he went, what have you just done? And Drew panicked, and he said, nothing, sir. And he said, what have you just done? He said, why are you asking me, sir? He said, well, all of my pain just felt like it drained away from me. So he said, oh, well, sometimes, sir, you just get the right muscle in the right place and it just pops back in. It spooked him too much. So he didn't tell him what he'd done. So he said, I just, sometimes it just happens, The guy came back a week later and said, I don't know what I'm doing here. I've had no pain ever since.
Wow.
So I was blown away by this because I created this thing. I didn't know you could do it in your head. So I'm at the other end of this line going, this is crazy. This is crazy. I literally was floating around for a week. I mean, just like, oh, what's going on? Like I was spaced out. And he said, I'll tell you something funnier than that, Stephen. I said, well, it can't be funnier than that. And he said, yes, it is. I worked on 5 people last week. Every single one left pain-free, and I never said a word to any of them.
Amazing.
So then I was like, what's going on here? Then he said, I worked on 3 people this week. I've started saying it out loud. It worked on the first 2. It didn't work on the third one. So can you see the difference between what's happened there? When it was all about the client, you focus on the client. There's an intent there. There's something beautiful transmits between the two of you. When you're focused on you, I might get this wrong. Oh, what if it doesn't work? I'm going to look pretty stupid saying all these words, and this guy's going to think it's spooky, and you're doing all that. You're thinking about you. You don't make the connection with the person. So this is what I'm looking for, or how you can help the viewers that are watching it now is forget about you. The more you worry about you'll get it wrong or you don't quite know how to do it or whatever, the more you get locked into this focusing on you and I don't know what I'm doing. Well, do you think I knew what I was doing when I created this? I play. I literally play at this. I mean, it's really serious. I mean, it's really serious business, but I play at it. And I have that childlike sort of enjoyment of just trying something different, just saying, well, nothing's worked so far. I'll try this new thing. And I just try something. And it's almost like a throwaway. Like, it's like, well, if this doesn't work, I don't know what we'll do next. And then it works. And then I share it with others because I think it works because it's like there's nothing beyond it. It's sort of like the connection with the person. They've said something. I think that probably means this. And I just follow them down that line. And currently, because I'm putting old stuff to let go together, which is going to be training for people who already deal with anxiety and things. I can't do it's not a standalone sort of like NLP or hypnosis or whatever. It's my way of doing things. So it won't suit everybody, and I want people who've already got some skills so that they already can match it across to what they're doing. So it's going to be full of gold nuggets of this is what I actually do, not what I say I do. So I'm going to release transcripts of several sessions that I have with people.
Wow.
Now, it's a bit raw, and I do feel I will get a lot of criticism from people saying, I don't think you should have said that then. And while I'm listening to these audios and videos, I actually sit there and I'm laughing, I'm crying, I'm doing all sorts of things. And Trudy's watching me and she's going, what have you done now? And I go, I can't believe I just said this to this person. but I believe that total openness and honesty with a client, and because of that you get it back from them, and that's what we need from the client, because they feed us all the clues or all the answers even. And all we have to do is then assist them to get from where they are to where they want to be. We're not directing them, they've come for our help, and we just help them. And a few minutes ago, you said that you couldn't take the compliment. And I think you should, but you should change it slightly. You should say, well, thank you for that. All I did was help you. You did a lot of the work. Or you can say something like that. But do accept the compliment, because it's upsetting for people to compliment you and not get the right feedback.
I agree, and I do. I'll say I was the guide. I'm so grateful for the compliments. I'm really a feedback person. I like both positive and constructive feedback. So when I get that positive feedback, it gives me a boost, and I always express gratitude for it. But at the same time, I really want to shine the spotlight back on them and help them understand there's a part of you that knows things you don't know, and all we did, and I'll often say this was a team effort. We unlocked that part so that it could make those changes on your behalf.
I'm pleased you came out with that phrase, because I was talking about this yesterday. That people often say, you tell them something that's really a breakthrough statement, and they go, oh, I already know that. But they don't know it in the right part of them. So consciously they go, oh, well, I was abused when I was 6 or whatever. But they're not going, well, what can you learn from that? You don't have to accept that you feel the way you do now. You can just change the way you feel now. And you don't, I love going back to cause, dealing with the cause. When I'm dealing with pain, I deal with why people are still holding on to the pain. So I'm a big believer in find the cause, you've got permanent change. But sometimes we can't find the cause, and all we have to do then is give them the logic of why it's just best to let go now. And that if you keep striving to find out why, you could spend the rest of your life doing that in pain. physical or emotional, while you find the answer out. And you might never find it. Or you could be out of pain now and just curious. Wouldn't that be better? It's almost like people come to us and they've got a red hot poker in their hand. It's an everlasting red hot poker. And they come in and they say, I picked this up at some time in my life and it's really hurting me. Can you tell me why I picked it up so I can drop it? And I go, well, just put your hand in that bucket of water. And they go, but I want you to tell me why I picked it up in the first place. So I go, well, we might do that, but put your hand in that bucket of water first. Yeah, let's get you out of pain first.
Yes.
We can be curious later of why it all started and everything else, but you don't have to hold on to anything. Mm-hmm. And this is all we're ever dealing with, somebody holding on to something. And the analogy I give is that people come to us, whether it's smoking or pain or anxiety, and they go, I've got this thing I don't want anymore, and they pass it to us. And when we go to say, I'll put that in the bin for you, they pull it back and they go, but it's keeping me safe. Mm-hmm. So you've got the conscious giving it away, and the unconscious go, hey, you don't know what I'm doing with that. I'm looking after you. And all we have to do, and I call it brain bargaining, is just to convince their unconscious that they're actually not keeping them safe anymore. Mm-hmm. That they can let go of it now. And if they let go of it, they'll have a far better life and they'll be safer. And that's at the heart of every single therapy and every technique. Whatever you do, that's always at the heart of it. There's not that, that's not missing from anything. Mm-hmm. And that's what I do, is I take things back to basics to say where we're going. But it all relies on us having this open attitude towards things. As soon as we get fixed on anything, like I can't do that, I was about to work on somebody in front of a group of trainees, and the guy I'm talking to the client, and this is somebody I've never met before in my life, and I say, what's the problem? And he said, I've got a very painful knee, I've got a torn meniscus. And I said, oh, I'm sorry to hear that, but how would you like to be out of pain? And he went, yeah, I'd love that. And there was a doctor behind me who was training, and he leaned forward and said very politely in my ear, you can't help him, Stephen. And I said, why is that? He said, but he's got torn meniscus, they don't mend. They're notoriously bad for pain. And I went, I can help him. And he said, why are you so sure? I said, because I don't know what a torn meniscus is.
I love that.
It didn't matter to me. People come in pain. I'm not a doctor. I don't need to know what it looks like. I don't need to know how badly broken it was. I just need to know whether they need the pain anymore, whether it's helpful or not.
I think this need to know why is so pervasive, and I think that it even comes into play in the context of imposter syndrome, where one of the arguments I hear for getting started is that I need to do more self-work first, or I'm afraid to move forward because of this, there's this because, I'm feeling this way because. And so I really think anyone listening can apply these concepts to the same thing. You don't have to be perfect. You don't have to have arrived. Just start moving forward. You're never going to have it all figured out. You could have this master plan, and when you start taking action, you're going to iterate anyway if you're paying attention to the feedback you're receiving.
It is about wanting to be so good that you don't start. So it's sort of, if you don't start, you can't prove that you're not going to be any good. So this is why we put things off. And we're looking for this perfectionism. But you see, if I taught you how to do Sudoku, if you didn't know how to do it, I wouldn't then give you a master book on it. I'd give you the beginner's book, and you'd do 200-300 of them. And then you'd go, well, I get nearly everyone right now. Oh, let's go up to the medium. And you'd work your way up to them. But people assume that the first client they get, will have 19 personalities and have murdered 3 people. They just assume, well, what if? What if they come with this and this and this and this? Well, you just say, well, come back next week. I'll just give it a bit more thought. You see, a client doesn't know what we're supposed to do. If I said to some of my clients, I just want you to stand on your head in that corner for 5 minutes, most of them would do it. without even asking why. Because it would be, well, if Stephen has asked that, then it's obviously needed. So, and when people say, like, well, I can't get started because of this, this, and this, I wait for a few minutes and I say, are you going to tell me any more rubbish? Because they literally are coming out with a list of excuses, and they don't even believe them themselves.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because if you're not started now, well, when are you going to start? When are you going to feel that good that one day you go, oh, I'll have a client now? You see, years ago, I used to say, why do doctors have a thing called a practice? They should be really good before they start. But having been a therapist for 9 years, I've learned from every single client that's come through the door. And sometimes I learn multiple things from them. Sometimes I've created things because nothing else I know works on them. So I've been creative and just tried something new. Now, this will make a few people jump. This is what I did a few weeks ago. I had a guy who told me that he had fibromyalgia. I'm very good at helping people with that. I helped about 700 people now. So he came along. This wasn't a demo, it was a paid for session. And he gets to the point where I get him to agree to listen to his body and not overdo things. And he says, but I'm a businessman, I'm a builder, and I've got 10 people work for me, and I'm a perfectionist, and it all has to be right. And I have to go around and watch over them and kick walls over if they haven't built them right. And I've got a wife and kids, and they rely on me, and all my employees' families rely on me. And I said, okay. I said, just brace yourself. And I went, bang! And he went, what? I said, I've just shot you, you're dead. He said, what do you mean? And I'm not very serious, but I went really serious. I went, you're dead. Okay, you're dead now. I've just shot you. So what's your wife going to do? He said, well, I'm sure she'd manage. I said, what about your kids? He said, the wife would help them manage. I said, and what about your 10 employees? He said, they'd all have another job within a week. And I said, so just tell me again, what's your problem? He said, I don't have one, do I?
Wow.
So sometimes you just have to challenge people with that. Mm-hmm. Because they're telling everybody else the same bullshit. Mm-hmm. I haven't started because. And we need to break that and say, you haven't started because you're just not confident in yourself, and you're not going to get that by not doing it. Confidence does not come from not doing. It just gets worse and worse and worse. I've learned techniques, and I don't put them into practice. I just sort of absorb how it works. So I might be using them in some way, but I don't use the technique. And if I go to use that technique, I have to read the manual again. And I learned the blast technique from Nick Davies, which is a brilliant technique. And I love it. But every time I go to do it, I have to go, right, I'll go and get my light pen, and I'll get his manual, and I'll have a read up.
I'm not familiar with this technique.
Oh, it's very good. It's a it's a eye accessing technique with a light on the end of the pen.
Okay. You've taught me something similar with rapid eye movement with closed eyes. Yeah.
Yeah, there are several of those things about, and because of it, and because I'd learned about 3 or 4 of them, I came to my own eye accessing movement that I sort of give away freely now, because you can learn it in about 2 minutes and help your clients with it. So I could even do it for your viewers if you like.
You posted something about this in Mike Mandel's group probably a couple years ago, and I was intrigued. And so you hopped on a Zoom call with me, you taught it to me, and I actually used it with a client that evening to help her release some intense anxiety and grief that she was having over the loss of a loved one. So it's an amazing technique. But yeah, I would love for you to teach us right now.
Okay, so I'll just explain sort of how it works first, and then I'll get you to close your eyes, and then I'll talk you through what you need to do as you do it. Yeah.
Yes.
So there are lots of eye accessing methods. And it's all based on the idea that when the eyes move, you're actually looking at part of your brain to pull that information from it. So if your eyes go up and to the left, then bottom right of your brain is being accessed, and vice versa. If you look down, the top of your brain is being accessed. So, and the body knows, and the brain knows how to do that automatically. So I was a bit concerned with all the different eye access and things that I'd learned, that they were all different, but all worked. So I sort of thought, well, do we need all the steps in every single one of these things? You know, and we're doing it to the client. We're waving our finger in front of their face, so we're directing it all. Wouldn't it be better to allow the part of them that knows how to put them into REM sleep, that sorts everything out at the end of the day and puts it away in the right filing cabinets by giving us REM sleep? So the eyes are darting about, and the bit of the brain it's moving to is where it's going to store that bit of information. And it's a really fast method of doing it. It's so fast that we end up with a really weird dream from it. Of, you know, your aunt is in a lift wearing a canoe. And you can't quite work out what it means, but it just means that you might have smelt somebody who wears your auntie's perfume or something. So we have this sort of weird dream, and rationally, if we think about it the next day, we can work it out. But that's been just putting everything away. Now, this is not strictly true, but it's almost that we have two halves to the brain, and one side is logical and one side's emotional. Now, when we have something that really affects us badly emotionally, so if you think about something and it really churns you over and you suddenly feel like you're in danger and all that sort of thing, anxiety comes over you, then what you've got there is like mainly emotional. And there's not much logic there. Now, if there was more logic with it, you wouldn't get so emotional, because the logical bit would say, but that's not now. That's what happened when you were 6. You know, that's over and done with. But because it's stayed in the emotional side all the time, it's not got a date stamp on it. So it can't say, well, that's in the future, you're worried about this particular person and they're ill, and, you know, that's in the future, it hasn't even happened yet. And it can't go, well, that's in the past and you were 6, so it should be faded by now, because it hasn't got that logic to it. So that's what we're going to do in a moment. So I want you to think, I'm going to treat you as the client, and everybody else can join in. So I want you to think of something that bothers you. Something that you don't have the answer to, and every time you think about it, it bothers you, but there's nothing you can do about it. So we're going to take something where there isn't, otherwise you might be looking for, well, what's the answer? There isn't an answer to this other than the fact you worry about it. So we're going to take that thing you can't do anything about, and we're going to turn the level that it bothers you down. Now, to do this, I'm not going to direct your eyes or anything, and you're not going to either. So just think of that thing and give it a number out of 10. 0 being it doesn't bother you at all, and 10 is right, it's terrible.
It's probably at about an 8 or 9.
This is so strange. I always know what number people are going to tell me.
I love that.
Not talking.
Did you plant that hypnotically in my brain?
No,
I know.
I've had people who told me they're a 4 out of 10, and I've gone, no, you're not, are you? You just thought you're a 2, haven't you? And they've gone, yeah, I did, but I didn't think.
Wow.
I'd be in trouble for it because, well, I think people give clues away. So anyway, so here's something you're going to do. So you're just going to relax, whatever it takes you to relax. Now, this isn't trance work or anything, so you can move about, you can do anything to just keep you comfortable. Get yourself relaxed and keep yourself comfortable, and take a few deep breaths and just close your eyes. Okay? So all you're going to do is, you're just going to think of that topic. You don't need to go into details about it. But you're going to think about that topic, and you're now going to let your eyes go wherever they want to go, because this is mainly an emotional issue for you, and it's now going to become balanced between emotional and logical. Whatever the unconscious thinks is right for you, whatever's best for you and safest for you, it knows what to do. Now, if anybody's watching on audio, they'll notice that Laurie's eyes are moving about, because eyes aren't perfectly round. They've got a bulge at the front. And so you will be able to see where they go. Now, for some people, they'll think their eyes aren't moving, but they are. And they can move about quite rapidly, and you still don't notice it. Yeah? So if you do think they're just staying there, you could always move them side to side a couple of times and then let them take over from there, but just to get them moving, and just so you know that they're moving. So I'm just going to go silent for about a minute now. And all I'm going to say to the unconscious is, as soon as you've got that balance where you think it needs to be, open their eyes for them and let them come back into the room. Hello.
Hello. That was amazing.
And this is it. It's your own experience.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because apart from describing it, this is something you can teach a client to do, and they can carry on doing it for the rest of their life.
I love that. And a couple notes I'd like to add is that you were able to calibrate and see my eyes moving right over Zoom for people who are afraid to work with people over Zoom. And we just worked context-free. Stephen has no idea what I was holding in my mind, unless if he knew that, just like he knew it was an 8 or 9. But we worked context-free, and I still got that same release. And for me, I can always tell something is releasing when I have those deep sighs, and I experienced those during that. So that was really beautiful. Thank you, Stephen.
And what number is it now? Just for those who aren't able to watch, Laurie's looking for it.
You know, it really is strange, because even though I do this and I know how this works, I'm surprised to see that I'm not finding it.
Yeah. And that's the thing. You see, there's no trickery involved. I'm not using clever words to say, you can't get it back now, can you? There's none of that, because I didn't do it. Mm-hmm. So if your unconscious did it for you and it thinks it's the right thing to do, then it's fixed. It's done. It's over and done with. Mm-hmm. So this isn't something you have to do every day or whatever. You keep thinking about the same thing and doing that. When it's gone, it's gone. Or when it's gone down to a level, accept that, because we've asked the unconscious to make it a safe level, that you might think, oh, I wish it was lower. But that's where it thinks it should be at the moment. And if it's not low enough and you think, well, I'd like it to get lower, you can just literally close your eyes and go back and say, well, in the next few days or weeks or however long it takes, but as soon as possible, I'd like that to go down to 0. And it will.
And this is something we can just coach ourselves through, and there's no deep trance necessary.
No, there's no trance for anything. Most of the work I do, even though I love hypnosis, most of the work I do doesn't involve trance. Sometimes it will happen, and some of that I can't help, because I've got a fairly hypnotic voice when I slow it down. So I hope nobody's driving at the moment. And this is the art of therapy, is becoming whatever you want the client to be. And this brings us back to the original topic, really, which is, if you're uptight about working on somebody, then it's not going to work so well because you're uptight. Whereas if you have a let's see attitude, they'll have a let's see attitude. And then there is some magic happens. When hypnotherapists talk about getting rapport with somebody and how do you get rapport, you don't need to be taught rapport. You've done it all your life, for goodness sake. There's certain people we meet and we just go, oh, I like this person. You know, and there's no reason for it. But usually it's because they've got the defences down, because they're open, because and that's all we need to be. I mean, I despair when people say, how do you filter clients so you know who you'd like to work with? You can't enjoy working with any client, get out of the business. You've only got to deal with them for a few hours, and then they're gone, and they give you money as well.
Yeah, and I think you touched on this earlier too, when you said when you're just really fully present and making it all about the person in front of you, that's going to build automatic rapport.
Oh, absolutely. I have people who come with depression, suicidal, and within a few minutes they're laughing. And I did. I had one person who came who we're going to take her own life. Um, she phoned me up and was just making an inquiry, but a random inquiry. At first, I thought it was a bit of a wind up just to sort of check the prices out. I didn't know what it was. And after a few minutes on the phone, I was like, "But you haven't told me what's wrong with you." And I was very fortunate. I'd been on suicide awareness training a few weeks before, and then this hairs went up on the back of the head, and I went, "Are you about to take your own life?" And she said, "Yes." I said, "Well, where are you?" And she said, "About 40 miles from you." I said, "Well, get in the car and drive very carefully here, and I'll see you." And she came, and she was just as bad when she got in the room. And she kept saying, "But what have I got to live for?" And I said, "I don't know, because you haven't told me anything about you yet. I have no idea other than what you tell me, and you're not telling me anything." I had about 2.5 hours of that, and I got to utter despair of, if I let this woman go, she's going to die. And I didn't know what to do, and I didn't know if I had to phone, sorry, emotional. I didn't know if I had to phone the police and stop her. I didn't know if I was allowed to physically restrain. I didn't know what I could do. And it was quite early days, it's a few years ago. And I got to a certain point, and I'll cut the swear word out, but I said, "I haven't got an effing clue what I'm going to do with you." I said, "I'll be absolutely honest, I haven't got an effing clue what to do with you now." And she laughed. And I said, "Why are you laughing?" She said, "I didn't think people like you swore." I said, "Oh, I do." And I spent another hour that was really fun with her. And we both swore, and and I dealt with it. And she skipped down my driveway when she left, and she came back for about 3 or 4 hugs.
Wow.
But if I hadn't said that, I'd have lost her, and I think the world would have lost her. Terrifying,
Yeah.
that situation. But there's only one person I've had like that. Everybody else comes in, and I have unconditional love for people, and within seconds I'm working with them, not on them. And this is the difference. You're not working on people, so you haven't got 100% of the responsibility. You've got 50% of it. I know the right things to ask and the right things to prod them with, and occasionally a whole new idea of this will work, which is usually funny. But I'm not afraid to do that, because I've got you see, I don't have the position that some people have, where if you've got an hour, if you take the lid off the can of worms quarter of an hour before the end of your session, you've got to put that lid back on in quarter of an hour. Yeah? Whereas I say, well, you're coming at 10 o'clock, we're going to take the lid off, and then we're going to put it back on when we're finished. And I don't care when that is. And I've even said to people, you see, you can prepare clients for what's going to happen in a session. So mine is, right, I'm going to say a lot of things. I'm going to do a lot of the talking, which is unusual. You think you're coming here to tell the counsellor something. Go to a counsellor if you want to be listened to. I'm going to listen to enough so I can find the answer to help you. And you're going to provide the answers. So I just want you to be open and honest. And do anything that I ask of you, because trust me, it will only be for a reason that helps you get what you've asked for. And I think what might happen at some point, it might not happen to you, but a lot of my clients, just before they're released from the problem, they get a little bit panicky. And it's because the unconscious is about to let go of it, and it does a double check. Will you still be safe when I let this go? And so when you get to that feeling of fear or anything, don't worry. I'll get you through it, and about 20 minutes later, you won't have that problem anymore. And you see, if you don't do that, they would freak out at that point. They'd go, "Oh, it's come back now." All this is gone. I did have one gentleman who, I've got a very long back garden, and it wasn't fenced. And he went, and there's trees each side and things. And he went down the garden. He said, "Oh, I need some time." And I knew he was having a little bit of a panic. And I thought, I'll get him back when he's in. And he went down the garden. But after 10 minutes, I couldn't see him. And I went out, and I didn't want to sort of spring out on him. So I'm sort of looking around trees and that. And eventually he just walks towards me, and I went, did a little dance. And I fetched him back in. I said, for a while, I thought you'd done a runner. He said, I would have done, but I don't know where my car is.
Oh, my goodness.
He was going, so I do a little bit of mind reading. I sort of know when they're trying to escape or not.
I love that. Stephen, what did you, if you're open to sharing, what did you do before you started studying this work? Because I feel like you have such a natural way of finding insight and finding, I love the way that you kind of creatively call people out on their excuses. I'm wondering what in the past has set you up for doing what you're doing now.
I think we're all born with a personality. And that sort of stamps how we see the world. So somebody put it well the other day that if you see a litter of puppies around the mother, you know, there'll be one that's scampering out, there'll be one that's shy and hidden in the corner. And, you know, so we're born with a personality, and that doesn't really change for us. So when I train people, I say, you don't have to become me or like me. You just blend this around how you are. So I think I've always been a person who challenges things. I took all my toys to bits when I was younger to see how they worked. And they were deliberately made, so if you undid these tabs, they broke off. So I had a lot of broken toys very quickly that I had to hide behind the bed. And later on, I went on to build my own motorbike when I was 17. I became a plumber. And in plumbing, you learn all the other trades and skills. So I designed and built my own house when I was 40. I've done lots of things, and teaching and marketing. And what everybody needs to realise is that it's not what you're taught that helps you help people. It's your life knowledge and everything you've learned on that journey. So I've had 27 different jobs. So, and there's not one of them that hasn't contributed towards this. You know, I've been an estimator surveyor. I've done lots of different things. But every single bit of it comes back to doing what I'm doing now. And it's quite strange. People keep looking for the purpose. And I wish people would stop doing it.
Thank you.
It will find you when you're ready. Yeah, your life purpose. And I didn't get my life purpose until I was 58 when I trained in NLP. But I always had an interest in how the mind worked. And obviously when I was in sales and marketing, you have to understand how people perform to buy, what thought processes they have, and how to sort of play along with that and join in with what they're after and so on. So I've always had this interest. So I originally got into this. I'd been helping people with weight loss for 7 or 8 years, but only by selling the Cambridge diet plan, which is a powdered thing that you mix as obviously shake. But even while I was doing that, somebody said, "You're not just a powder pimp, are you?" Which I thought was a lovely expression. Because I really cared for the people I was helping, and I studied a lot of Tony Robbins and things like that, so I was well into positive attitude and stuff. And I started to spot a few problems with it now, that people think they have to be positive all the time, and that's not true either. But I was helping people with their emotions and the psychology of losing weight or keeping the weight off. And I noticed a few people that the diet worked brilliantly. And I even had one woman lose 8 stone with me in quite a short period of time. I think it was 8 months. And then she just stopped seeing me. And then the next time I saw her, she'd put all the weight back on plus an extra stone, which is what tends to happen if you diet. And I just wanted to help people. And we had a conversation earlier where I said I noticed that women were underconfident of their skills and guys tend to be overconfident of their skills. And I realized, and I was dealing with probably 90% females, 10% males, which I didn't expect as a guy to be doing that, because the women who sold it, it was like a 60-40 mix. So I thought I'd get mainly males, but I got about 90% female. And I noticed this in most of them, that it was just lack of confidence, lack of self-belief, and I wanted to help them. And I didn't know how, but I'd had hypnotherapy a few years before when I'd gone through a messy divorce and got to a very low point in my life. And so I was a massive believer in it, and I'd always wanted to train in it. So I went online to see if I could download a script to help people with weight loss and confidence. And I found a few scripts, but I didn't know how to read them out. And so I kept trawling through the internet, and eventually I found out this course that said you can come and learn an introduction to NLP and hypnosis for the weekend, and it's free.
Wow.
So I just had to pay for a hotel and things to go down there, and I went and I thought, this is what I've been looking for all my life. And I signed up, and it cost me the best part of about £6,000 that I didn't have. I didn't have it. And I sort of stuck it on credit cards and played around and did things until I could. And then I had to get really good really quick, because I had to start earning money at it. So I think with a lot of things, it's not about how you feel and if you're ready. It's really jump in.
Yeah.
Jump in and know that you can swim.
When I learned hypnosis, I did the same thing where I kept wanting to get started and talking myself out of it. And so I tell people I almost like mama birded myself out of the nest. I gave my note. I sat down and I really did some soul searching, and what's the worst that could happen if I go all in, and had a safety net in place. But I gave notice at my job, and I stepped into this full time, and I was terrified. But I put myself in a position where it was sink or swim, and I was so determined. I loved my job as a hairstylist. It was amazing, but I was ready to be able to just make a more meaningful change in people's lives, and to be able to work from anywhere in the world, which is why I do Zoom sessions. And I had no idea if I was going to be good at it. I knew that I had great training, but it was terrifying for me. And I did. I essentially gave myself an ultimatum, and I'm so grateful. It's been so hard, but I'm so grateful that I did it.
We do have to challenge ourselves, and challenging ourselves isn't this internal battle to say, am I good? Can I answer everybody's questions? Can I do this? It's not that. Mm-hmm. We literally have to launch. Here's a good example that people talk about planning for the future and goal setting and so on. Now, I was in sales, and I met lots of goals. I was the top salesman in about 9 out of 10 companies that I worked at. The other one was life insurance, and I was too happy to be able to sell life insurance. It didn't work for me. But all the rest, I just looked after the client. I found out what they wanted. If it wasn't my product, I'd tell them quite quickly, no, you're not going to get that from this product. You need to go somewhere else. So that always worked for me, because then they would send me friends and relatives who they said, well, look, he's so honest. If it's not right for you, he won't even sell it. So I got very good at that. And a lot of things that I learned were, for instance, I recorded myself on every sales call I went on a little audio in my pocket. And as soon as I put it on record, I forgot about it, because I'm there in front of somebody and it was scary. And so I'd forgotten about this tape recorder. The only time I didn't forget was when I pressed play instead of recording. And they heard the previous call, So, but it's a way of therapists getting better, is to, if you're not going to play it back to anybody else, and you just listen to it in your own privacy, and then you can listen to things that you've missed. So in sales, there's buyers' signals. They send off signals going, yeah, I'm ready. And if we're too obsessed with the self and getting the sale, we don't see it. We just go, well, and they say, could I have it on Thursday? Which is like, I'm going to buy it. and we go, oh, we'll come to the delivery dates later. I'm still going to try and, I'll still try and convince you need to buy it. But they're saying I'm going to buy it, but they're just not using those words. But when I played the tape, I used to put it on in the car in between the next call. And I'd play it back and I'd go, oh, that's so obvious. But it was obvious now at the next call. I couldn't do anything with the one I missed, but I could now make sure if somebody said that again, I'd go, yes, you can have it Tuesday.
So for a person who tends to beat themselves up when they listen to playbacks of their own voice, I just had a woman last night that said, I want to listen to this amazing call that we had yesterday again, but I hate to hear the sound of my own voice. What mindset would you have someone listen back in to help them not be judgmental of themselves, but to use it as a time of constructive feedback?
I think as long as you're doing it for yourself, just be easy on yourself. I must come out with a lot of rubbish. I mean, I really must, because I talk a lot. But it's not that somebody's going to say that to me, because there's so much good stuff in there that it's sort of allowed for. And I used to hate the sound of my own voice. I mean, it was awful. But we all have that, because nobody hears themselves the way other people hear them. And everybody who loves you has heard that voice that you're now hearing for the first time. And they love you. It doesn't matter. And if you want to alter your voice, you can. I used to have because I used to talk really, really, really fast, I had quite a high-pitched voice, and which didn't go down very well because my surname when I was born was Betty. Betty. So you can imagine being called Betty and having a high voice. So this is why I've got such a sense of humour. You have to.
Yes.
Survival skill. So I learned, and you can do this either way, but if you want your voice higher or lower, you can change it. And you can change it in a few weeks. And I learned this thing called humming down. And all you do is, if you want your voice deeper, you just go... and then you hold it at that level. If you wanted a higher voice, you just elevate it higher, and you just make your muscles work around that note.
What an amazing little unexpected nugget. I'm going to use this.
And that's all I did. And I would think within 6 weeks, my voice changed dramatically. So I'm not too worried now, because it's not my voice that matters, it's the quality of what I say. And everything I say is just observations of me learning from my own life and those that enter my life. So the woman I helped, that was my first ever therapy client, and she's got over me, was because I'd collapsed at one stage and spent 3 months in bed, barely able to get out of bed just to go to the bathroom. And it wasn't until I worked on her that I repaired my own stuff.
Thank you. Thank you. I love that you made that point.
Yeah. So don't think you have to be right before you help them. As you help them, it will help you.
Yes.
Because virtually everything you tell them that's common sense and sensible for them will be common sense and sensible for you. And your unconscious will hear it. And this was brought to, I've got a brilliant example of this, of an unknowing programming of myself. I helped a woman who had she had a trapped nerve, and she took her arm up to here and it used to nip. And I went through the fact that we all have a pacing system in our body, and it shouldn't go from comfortable to really hurting in a split millimeter. That it should, like every other joint in your body, you can move it, and there's a range where it stops. And at that stop, it still doesn't hurt. But if you do things slowly, there's it's comfortable, it's uncomfortable, it's getting more uncomfortable, it's like starting to hurt a bit. I'll stop now. And just by talking to her about that, it changed that arm, and she could lift it all the way up.
Wow.
Now, about 3 days later, I go to an event where I It was a free event to learn to be a guest speaker and earn a fortune. And as all free events, it came to a sales pitch in the afternoon. And the guy was very clever that he trapped everybody in the room, and he used very clever language to say, you've come along, you want to improve yourself, and you've had my free stuff all day, and you ought to sit and listen while I do the sales pitch now. Not quite like that, but he trapped everybody in the room. And I'd had back pain until I turned it off 9 years ago. And I started gradually sort of feeling uncomfortable. And at first it was, well, I've been in a hotel chair all day, and I was just doing this. And I had a coat and a bag, and I really wanted to go, but, I knew he was going to point me out from a room of about 200 people if I went. Nobody was leaving. Everybody was in fear of this guy. So I can't take my coat and bag, so I can't do anything. I went to the back of the room. I'm in pain. It gets worse. I'm exercising. I'm bending. I'm going, oh, God, I haven't felt like this in years. I even went to the toilet, came back, and nothing cured it. And I sat back down again. And after a while, I was in so much pain, I was grunting. I was, and I thought, I've got to go, haven't I? And people were leaving me. I think they thought I was going to do something else. and I thought, I've got to go. I'm in so much pain. I can't sit here, and I'm disturbing the audience now because I'm making so much noise. So I grabbed my coat and my bag, and I didn't even look at the guy. I sort of just went, I can't help it. I've got to go. I did the hand signal, and I got my coat and bag, and I went outside. And as I closed the door to that room, every little bit of pain went.
Amazing.
So I told this woman that the body doesn't go from comfort to sharp pain, that it's giving you a message to tell you something. Now, my message was, you can get out of it, Stephen, it's fine. But the embarrassment level was up here. So my body went, well, let's try you with a bit of a discomfort. Oh, let's try you with a bit of pain. Let's try you with a lot of pain. Let's try you with a really lot of pain. And then I went, oh, that defeated that. I don't care anymore. And I got out.
Amazing.
And as soon as I was out there, I didn't need it anymore. So it went away.
Amazing.
So I didn't ask for that. That was me working on a client, solving a problem for them. It solved a problem for me.
Because your unconscious mind was listening just as well as hers.
Yes. And it did bring me to a point I was going to make earlier, and then I got distracted. I often distract myself. Was that when we're goal setting, this is how we tend to do it. We go, in 5 years, I want this thing. So then we say, right, I need to know I'll actually get there. What's the point in getting to step 8 and there isn't a step 9? Yeah. So we go, okay, so I'm going to plan every step. So there's one every 6 months for 5 years. So I've got my 10 steps now. But it takes me 9 months to think of the 10 steps. So now I go out with a fully formulated plan. And I get on the first step. And by the time I get to that step, it's 9 months now. And I'm heading towards my goal. And step 2 is in front of me. But now there's lots of things in its way because things have changed in 9 months. So now step 2, I have to go over here. And when I get to step 2, I realize step 3 is miles away. So I make a new step 3. And eventually I make a new step 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
Yes.
And then I get to my goal. And I've only used step 1. The only one I planned. So I'm now on step 10, which is the goal. Now, when we focus on a goal, we only get the goal. We forget everything else in our life. So when you get this, you go, hey, I've got this thing now. I can't remember wanting this because you wanted it 5 years ago. So we've got to have goals that are open-ended and that when we get there, we can know how much further to go on and so on. And also, when we get the goal, we don't want to look around and go, look, I'm a multimillionaire. My wife and kids are going to love this. Where are they? They left you 2 years ago. Did they? I didn't notice. And this is the trouble when we're obsessed with goals. So at that very meeting, I'm queued to go in, and a guy joins me in the queue, And he said, "What's your goals?" I don't know him. He hasn't introduced himself or anything. "What's your goals?" And I didn't want to sit next to him. He seemed the sort that would talk all the way through the lecture. So I wanted to put him off. So I said, "I don't have any." And everybody turned around in the crowd, because everybody was goal setting, and looked at the idiot. He doesn't have any goals. So then I explained what I've just explained to you, that you know, when you get it, you don't really want it anyway. And he said, "Well, what do you do?" And I didn't have an answer. But I've got this fine tuning with my unconscious that it helps me out. So it gave me an answer. And I found myself saying to this guy something I'd never heard before in my life, which was, "I've asked my unconscious to give me a life so friggin' awesome that I cannot even imagine it now."
Wow. Wow.
I turned from the village idiot to, who said that? And it wasn't me. My unconscious made that up for me to tell my unconscious. Isn't that incredible?
That is incredible. And that really resonates for me, because part of the reason I chose this career is, ultimately, it's because I love helping people. And I did a lot of that actually in the context of being a hairstylist, and people just unload on me and they would leave feeling prettier and more they felt heard. So I loved that aspect, but I really wanted to travel. And as I have continued in this work, I get so much gratification from it. And it has allowed me to have more time, more deep time with my daughters, and really enhance relationships here, that now that travel dream is not as bright and shiny as it used to be. But by just continuing to go down that path, and anyone listening, this is a gold nugget, what Stephen just said about just take the next step. Just take the next step, because when you try to plan the whole thing out, you are sabotaging yourself.
And we don't need fixed goals. I mean, the idea of vision boards and all that, that one sentence I said, and I didn't have to repeat it. It's not put it on your mirror and say it every day. It's giving an instruction to your unconscious. It's giving it permission. Now, I hadn't thought of this before, but listen to that word, permission. So I'm allowing you to do this.
Oh.
Yeah. This one thing, it's permission.
Oh my goodness.
I've another mission, I'll do that again for you for that mission. Yeah?
Yes.
Permission. You see, 3.5 years ago when I started Old Pain to Go, it started off as, I'm going to help everybody I can out of pain. And then I realised that I could only help so many people. And then I thought, well, I've got to train other people to do this. And then I made my mission to help as many people as possible in the world out of pain. Now, most people who are goal setters would say, it's not specific, Stephen. But I now have 1,200 practitioners. If I'd have decided to get 1,200 practitioners by now, I would have about 200 practitioners and a fabulous spreadsheet that told me how I got the other 1,000. Because I would have been so focused on, how do I get there, instead of just doing it.
Mm-hmm.
So things are organic. You help somebody who tells somebody who helps somebody who tells somebody. And then I got somebody who's so keen to become a trainer. And I really panicked. It was like, this is my baby. I blood, sweat and tears. I spent years developing it. Thousands of hours of not getting paid. I spent 7 years not earning an income. This owes me thousands and thousands and thousands of pounds, but I kept plodding at it. And I didn't want somebody to just go, oh, I got it now.
Yeah.
So I was paranoid. But then I thought, well, the more people I train to train, the more people I train. And that adds to the mission of getting as many people as possible in the world out of pain. So I can see a time when the poorest village in the poorest country in the world will have somebody who's a practitioner who might not earn much, but probably earns like double what everybody else does per hour to help people. And they pay him 2 hours, 3 bags of rice or whatever, and he's happy and they're out of pain. And that's what I'd like to see, is that this sort of takes off until people no longer think of having to go for drugs or painkillers or morphine or whatever. They'll just think of a natural way of doing it. I don't care if it's not down to me. I don't care if it's somebody else's brand or whatever, or it's just so widespread, like Reiki or whatever. I don't care, as long as it gets people out of pain.
I love that. My good friend Emma Armis trained with you.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. So if you wouldn't mind, I would love, unless there's something else you want to wrap up first, I would love to talk a little bit about the marketing side. It's said that 20% of our efforts yields 80% of the results. So if you were to look back and perhaps in hindsight and recognize what the key things were that you did to start to build your business, the things that made the biggest difference, and perhaps anything you would tweak if you had it to do again.
It's a really interesting one, because I taught marketing, and yet this is the hardest thing I've ever had to market. It's the equivalent of saying, look, this is so new, you don't believe it will work, but I can assure you it does. It's a difficult thing to say. So I started off helping people with anxiety, but a lot of people don't call what they've got anxiety. And I didn't want to put people off who've got OCD or hoarding, so I started talking about I'm a thought coach, or I'm a thought. At one stage, I called myself a thought tamer, because I was like, I don't want to use those words. This is so different. I want my own words. But of course, nobody understood them. And it was really weird, because I earned very little, and I didn't help as many people as I should have done, because they weren't coming through the door. The ones that did loved it. But most of the work I do is almost that people forget they used to be how they were before they came. So it doesn't get a lot of referral work like you think it would do. I've had a few people who then gave me loads of clients because they just told everybody. But most of my clients go away and they just forget they used to be in pain or have anxiety. It's as simple as that. So I've done things like body, mind, spirit events. I think adverts don't work. I just totally get nowhere with adverts. You can pay a lot of money and it gets in front of a lot of people, but it doesn't even result in a phone call. The thing I found is working is I'm in a few groups. I'm deliberately restricted. I'm not sort of like, I'll go in all these groups and I'll try and get some work. So I have enough groups that I can cope with when somebody posts something that I can see it. And then I'll just put an answer that's helpful. I don't mention old pain to go. I don't do anything. I just say, well, perhaps you could try this. And then people are intrigued, and then they'll say, what do you mean, Stephen? And I'll go a little bit deeper. And Mike Mandel's group has been incredibly brilliant for me. I love the guys a bit, him and Chris. And I managed to meet them last year. And that's been really good, because even in that group, if I'm not in there and somebody mentions pain, it's only 2 or 3 posts before somebody tags me in on it.
Yes.
And even at my body, mind, spirit events, where I've been going for probably 5 years and saying, I'm a thought coach and I help people with anxiety and all this sort of thing. I got new I was getting new banners every 6 months. Like, these will work. Different designs, different things on it, less, more, all sorts of things. I even had a tent so people could go in a booth and chat to me privately, and all sorts of things. And I went with my new banners, and it just said, I help people with physical and emotional pain. And the woman who knew me for 5 years and usually was on the next stand, who did mediumship, said, oh, do you help people with anxiety then? When it said anxiety, she never asked the question. She goes, oh, is that what you do? I've always wondered what you do. She'd been next to me for 5 years. So, and it was when I focused on one particular topic, that's when things happened.
Yes.
And there's there's the problem with marketing that we can market the wrong thing. If you market hypnosis or hypnotherapy, you're actually saying, I am one of the people that does hypnotherapy. Hypnotherapy is good for all these things. By the way, why don't you go online, just tap in hypnotherapy and see who's closer to you and who's the cheapest. That's what you're
Right.
saying.
Right.
You have to big yourself up that this is what I do and I'm very good at it. And a lot of people are so frightened of that. And that training event I went to for a weekend on, it was called Congruent Marketing. I was so unfamiliar with congruent, I had to look it up in a dictionary before I signed up for
it. Me too.
And it was about how are people going to find you if you're hiding in a bush? You've got to be under the spotlight. You've got to say, I do this.
Are you telling me that the idea of if you build it, they will come isn't true?
No, not if you build it.
Right.
If you just build it, who's going to come to it? Who knows you built it? So you have to tell people you've built it.
Yeah.
But you have to tell them what's in it for them.
Yes.
You see, we all go by, quite a lot of web pages start with, here, let me tell you about me.
And they're bored in 2 seconds.
Yeah. And I have lots of people who say, I can teach you marketing and funnels and all that. But first of all, let me show you my yacht. I've switched over in seconds. I'm like, if you understand marketing and you can't teach it on the fact that the person has come to you about them.
Yes.
You know nothing about marketing.
Yes.
You can't teach me anything. So it's always about them. And even when I had sold Cambridge Diet, the company used to put a page up for you that was linked to their directory. And so somebody would put in the postcode and they'd get the sort of 5 nearest people. So it was quite unusual to have a guy doing it. It's mainly females. But most of the other people's short brief that you got to state your case was, I went on the diet. I was 18 stone, I've lost 6 stone, so I think it's good, so come to me. And mine was, are you struggling with your weight? Do you keep losing weight and put it back on? Perhaps I can help you. And so it was about them. It's nothing about me. Yeah?
Yes.
And I used to get so many people travelled to come and see me compared with the one that was in their street.
Yes.
Just because I want you to take notice, I'm the customer. So we solve people's problems and they always say, look for the pain and heal it. Well, that's exactly what I do. Do you know what people's pain are? Yes, I do. But it's something I'm still working on every day to find how to say it in a way that makes it become logical.
Mm-hmm.
That takes it from being this miracle, that takes it into, look, you've tried drugs, you've tried everything else, you've had a pain, it's 10 years since you injured yourself. Would you like to be out of pain? Would you just like to try this then?
Yes.
It's that sort of attitude towards it. And this works because there's a good logic there. You don't need somebody telling you that you've got an injured back every day. And that's all the pain message does. We're just going to ask it if it's sensible to turn that off and stop telling you every day you've got a bad back. Could you just remember you've got a bad back? And they say yes. I go, well, you don't need the pain then, do you? And it is, as daft as it sounds, it is as simple as that.
Amazing. I find that the more simple that I've made my sessions, the more simple I make my message, the more, people listen. When you ask them about what's happening to them in their day-to-day life, how this problem is impacting them right now, instead of offering some like big, beautiful future, you're going to be profoundly peaceful and release all your anxieties. If you say, do you want to stop dreading getting out of your car when you pull into the driveway at night? You're going to grab way more attention.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's more sensible for people, isn't it?
Yeah. So what I hear you saying is, You're building, essentially you're building rapport inside these groups. You're getting people to know you, to like you, and to begin to trust you. And then another thing that I see is that you have essentially created a sense of prestige, for lack of a better word, where, I'm in Toronto and Mike Mandela is talking about you. I hear different people, your name comes up over here, it comes up over here. And so I'm thinking, if all these people know, like, and trust Stephen Blake, he must be a great guy. So many people that I'm doing these sessions with right now about imposter syndrome, they're like, well, I just have to get this product just right. And I created an anxiety product. It's the first thing I did when I started doing this, and it was brilliant. It was amazing. I didn't sell a single copy because I didn't have anyone to talk to about it. So I think that you need to just get out there, start letting people get to know you. I know it's scary putting yourself on the World Wide Web, and you might open yourself up to criticism, but as Stephen said, it's none of your business what other people think about you. And here's where Stephen said a little while ago, playfulness comes in. So for me, when I think, sometimes my heart will be pounding when I'm about to put something up on Facebook. I do most of my marketing through videos on Facebook, and I'm just terrified, and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I can't believe I said this. I can't believe I'm going to put this out there. And then it's almost like this little girl who skips down the street and just doesn't have a care in the world, just hits the enter button and it goes out. And it's just about letting people know you're there, and that in and of itself establishes you as an expert in your field and lets people know, okay, when I'm in pain, this is the person I reach out to.
Absolutely. We just have to do these things. If we overanalyze and overanalyze, and if a client came to us with these problems, we'd say, oh, I've got the answer. I can help you with that.
Yes.
But we just need to we need to treat ourselves with love. We get talked out of that. We lose self-worth. I've got 3 videos I put together about self-worth. They're so effective. They're about 10 minutes each, that I put them freely on my website. If you go to allpaintogo.com /academy, it's one of the first things on there. And I let people go there and help themselves, because it's just a little thing, and it works so effectively because we're in charge of our own self-worth. We don't realise that. So I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but when somebody says, I say to people, well, what's your level of self-worth currently? And they go, and I can see they're going to say 4, and they go, it's a 7. And I go, it's a 4, isn't it? And they go, yes, it's a 4, Stephen. And I go, yes, I know. And I make fun of it, because it's like, yeah, you don't have to tell me, just tell me the truth. It's fine, because that's what you're here for. And then I take them through a little bit of a few minutes of it, and I say, so a few minutes ago you told me you were a 2. You're a 2 out of 10 in your self-worth. Yeah. So what if I told you that was originally based on the way people treated you when you was really young? And if you got neglected, or you didn't get looked after, or you didn't get the love you expected, you then didn't expect to get that love. So then you sort of almost taught people not to show you the love and affection, and you've gradually lowered your self-worth over a period of time to match in with what you think other people think of you. But I didn't say what do other people think of you, did I? I asked you what your level of self-worth is. And there's only one person now who can make it a 10. It's you. And you can do that now, or you can fret for the next 10 years while you give me reasons why you don't get to a 10. But it's still going to be you that makes that decision. And you might not think you're worth it. I don't care.
That's brilliant.
You give yourself a 10, you're working at 100% of being you, you'll be brilliant. You stay at a 7, you'll be working at this level of 70% of you. You'll never find out your true worth. So why don't you join in now and become a 10, try it on, and then stay there.
Amazing.
Simple.
Amazing. Stephen, for people who have been listening and are wanting to know how they can train with you, how they can learn more about you, where's the best place for them to start?
It will be oldpaintogo.com. I always get this wrong. Forget the R on the end. Oldpaintogo.com. So it's number 2 in it. Eventually there will be Old Fat to Go and Old Stuff to Let Go, but still based on my principles.
Okay.
So it's always the same. It's always allowing the unconscious to see how you are at the moment, how you want to be, and how it can help you get there. And just people letting go.
And how can a person get their hands on those transcripts you spoke about earlier?
Right, that will be part of Old Stuff to Let Go.
Okay.
It will only be available to those people who think that they're already trained in anxiety.
Okay.
So I'm not giving a definitive list and saying, show me your qualifications. I think you'll be wasting your money if you don't have a background in this and then you buy this.
Okay.
Because it won't be explaining the basic principles of lots of the things that I've drawn from. And neither will I. This will be the gold nuggets for people who are already doing it, who think, how could I work more efficiently? How could I work quicker? How could I help people in one session if that's what they want to do? Because that's what I've always done. And that's usually 3 to 4 hours, I would think, on average.
And you do a lot of that work over Zoom, those trainings over Zoom?
Yeah, it doesn't matter to me either way.
Okay.
The only thing people have is this idea that somebody's going to ab-react at the other end of a Zoom camera. I've never, ever had it, and I've worked on thousands of people. Mm-hmm. And if anybody does have a reaction, and I've had a few people have reactions in front of me, you do just the same over the Zoom, which is you can say, or you can pre-warn them, if you start to shake or do something, you're just letting go of what you want to let go of. So enjoy it.
Yes. It'll
feel out of control and you'll feel a bit frightened, but you're letting go. So in a few minutes you won't have it anymore. So I don't want you to go into fear and keep trapped in there by, locking yourself up. Just allow it to leave you. And I'm here at the other end and I'm watching and you're safe. And that's how I do it. There is no difference. You see, your lighting there is beautiful. I can see your face and everything else. Occasionally, the only difference is we get clients with a window behind them or something.
Or you can see them from here up.
Yeah, and the darkness comes into the face because the window overtakes the light setting. Mm-hmm. And it just makes them in dark. And all you say is, can you just turn your camera around or draw your curtains or something?
Yeah.
Apart from that, if you can see people, you can observe, because everything I do is about a subtle observation of them. But I can't tell you what I've noticed. I'm not noticing at the level of consciousness. I'm just noticing when somebody tells me something is bad or whatever. Or if they're about to say 4, I might probably recognize it on the lips or something. I don't know what happens. But this is the whole thing. You see, I'm not under pressure to mind read or do anything. I'm just listening to somebody. I'm absorbed in the story. I'm trying to find out why it's running badly. It's just a program, and they're just going to have to let go of it. And I've just got to find what the best thing is to help them let go of it. We tend to make things too complicated, and also we keep going on these training courses that don't make us more confident. They make it more complicated, because now which one of these 15 things shall I use? Yeah, everything I've done, it's a bit like Bruce Lee learning the martial arts, and then he merged them. He picked all the best bits and said, I can do a shortcut there and I can do this. Everything you learn, just pull it together, because it's the same principle. It's got to be the same principle for everything.
Yes.
And it also applies to your life. You can learn from everyday things. Each and every day you'll learn something new. And I've lost count of the amount of times clients come and I've run out of things and I'm like, what do I do next? And then I think, I saw that video yesterday about...
Yes.
or the postman came yesterday and he was late, and this happened, and I go and I tell them that story, and suddenly we're back on again. Everything switched around, and that's happened so often, and it's never been 2 days before. It's always been the day before.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. So if the person listening to this audio right now was right before you, and to the person listening, I'm talking about you. I want you to imagine that you're here, that Stephen is looking you in the eye. What would you say to this person to help them take action now?
You don't have to be perfect. Just do it. And think about the other person, because if you don't treat somebody else because you're too worried about you, you've really let that person down. Just get out there and do it. It is so joyous helping other people. There's barely a day goes by without me crying in joy. And when I do have my days of self-doubt, and we all have them, I'll have a day or two of it, and then I go in my group where all my practitioners go, and they tell some fabulous stories of what they've done. And I start to think to myself, oh, this doesn't work, it can't work, why am I teaching it? Oh, nobody can work this. And I go in the group and I read about 15 stories of what they've done, and I go, this does work, and everybody else can do it, and I can as well. But be yourself. Don't try to be anybody else. Don't think you have to do a certain style or anything. Do a style that you feel comfortable with, but perfection never makes anything. And there's a good saying that is, like, if I've got some work and I want Trudy to proofread it or something, if it's just a nub of an idea and I pass it to her, she'll be correcting whether there's a comma in the right place and whether I've got a capital letter. And I don't need that feedback. Mm-hmm. So I can say to her, look, this is 10% done. What do you think to it? And I'll get the right feedback. Mm. Or I can say this is 99% done, and she'll correct the commas in the spelling mistakes and everything else. But probably not read it. Just looking for those things.
Yes.
So don't keep proofreading yourself as though it's got to be perfect. Near enough is good enough. If it helps the client, it's good enough. Just look at a solution for them. Mm-hmm. That's all it is. Focus on them, find the solution, help them to it, send them out the door, hug them plenty of times on the way, let them skip down the road.
I love it. Thank you so much. This has been so amazing, and I'm so grateful that I had the sense to ask you to be the first person that I interviewed, because this has been just absolutely brilliant, Stephen. You have really just blessed me by being here with me for the last hour and a half. Thank you.
And I really appreciate this opportunity that you gave me.